Next presenter will be Cynthia Farrell. Ms. Farrell is the Policy Manager for Adult Protective Services Central Office. Ms. Farrell will be speaking about Adult Protective Services. Take it away, Ms. Farrell.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Kristen mentioned, I'm Cynthia Farrell. I'm the Program Policy Manager for Adult Protective Services for the state of Michigan. And on May 4th, we had a symposium that discussed the APS 101 Basics, which was recorded and is located on the Elder Abuse Task Force website. Today, I'm going to be talking about mandatory reporters and the investigation process. So let's get started. So the mandatory reporters falls under our Michigan statute, which is 400.11 A through F, which is in the Michigan compiled laws. And that's what we are guided by for our adult protective services. And the definition that's on the screen is from 400.11 A subsection 1. And it talks about those who are employed, licensed, or certified. If you're employed or an agency that provides the services of healthcare, education services, social welfare services, mental health, or other human services. And I'm sure that many are on this participating in the symposium today would fall under one of these categories. On the next slide, we talk about physicians and law enforcement and the employees of the medical examiner's office. And new to us are financial institutions of banks and credit unions for reporting financial exploitation. A new law was enacted and what became effective September 26 of 2021, and it's called the Financial Exploitation Prevention Act, which then has the banks and credit unions who have a physical presence here in Michigan to be mandatory reporters for only financial exploitation. And also, besides who the mandatory reporters are, we have several entities who are non-mandatory reporters, and those are attorneys, long-term care ombudsmen, and the clergy. And they are exempt from having to report due to privilege requirements, which exempts them from being mandatory reporters. And after my presentation, you will have a presentation about the long-term care ombudsman program, and you'll learn more about that then. And so a lot of things we get from people who are mandated reporters, they have concerns and the reasons to report. And we try to explain to them it's to make a difference. You be the catalyst to stop the abuse and neglect and any exploitation that may be going on. And also when you report, there are services that are available to the adult and the family that they might not be aware of that we can initiate if they're willing to accept those services. And the things that we like to talk about is concerns about reframing the concern. It's not interference. It's really a concern. You have a concern about somebody, and that's what you're making the report for. It's not about removing somebody from their home. To reframe it, it's assisting that adult to thrive in their home. And that is what our goal is for Adult Protective Services, is to make sure that person is protected and that they can remain in their home and people thrive best in that setting. It's not that you will be found out. There's concerns about that. Our referral source is kept confidential. We are not allowed to release that information. And 9 times out of 10 people guess and then they're wrong. They'll be surprised at who really is calling in and has a concern about them. And when we talk about mandated reporters, there are some requirements. It must be an oral report to our centralized intake. That is how our statute is written. The statute was written 40 years ago, so we are looking to add a web-based reporting process for mandated reporters. It's not there yet, but it's something that we're working towards. You have immunity from civil liability. If you in good faith make a referral because you truly have a concern about someone, you're going to be protected under this statute. As I said before, the referral source is kept confidential. The only time we are allowed to give it out is if the court orders it, and they have to give us a specific order saying they want the referral source name. And in the 24 years I've been working at central office, I've only had that request happen twice. In my time here that we were requested to provide the real referral source name. So just know that it's not something that's done or requested very often, and it is kept confidential. The other thing for mandated reporters, it is a $500 fine for failure to report. And once again, I've only been aware of one situation where that has occurred. So that should not be a concern. If I would say trust your gut. If you have a concern, make the report. And as mandated reporters, that is something you're required to do, is to make that report in good faith. And once it gets to Adult Services Centralized Intake, they'll make the decision on whether to assign or deny that. And we'll get into that a little bit more. And then we also did a video through the Elder Abuse Task Force. It's 10 minutes. It's a mandated reporter video, kind of goes over some of the stuff that we've covered here today, but also goes into a little bit more depth there. So that is located on the Attorney General's Elder Abuse website, and I think the link will be provided either in the chat or at the end of the presentation. This is the number that you would call statewide. It's our centralized intake for abuse and neglect. It's the 855-444-3911 number. It takes referrals for both children and adults. So when you're calling and making an adult referral, just let them know that you're calling and they'll bring up the correct system to intake that adult referral. As I said, it's available 24/7, 365 days a year. And this is the main line that you would call. Now we're going to get into what to report, and under our statute, there are some required areas that need to be reported there. You know, the name of the adult, where they live, description of what's occurring about the abuse, and neglect, or exploitation, the cause and the manner of that it's occurring. Have you observed it? Have you witnessed it? Are you providing third-hand information? Examples of how the adult is unable to protect him or herself, because we talked in the previous symposium, our definition is a vulnerable adult is someone who is 18 or older, who has a mental or physical impairment or advanced aged, and this is the important part, the and is unable to protect him or herself. We don't want to give the notion that just because somebody is vulnerable, that equates or has a disability, that there equates to vulnerability. There has to be some reason that they're not able to protect themselves. The more thorough information that you can provide, giving specific examples, will help the person who's making the decision to assign or deny their referral. Having that additional information clearly, they can make that decision if they have clear, thorough information on what's happening. If you know of anyone else who's aware of the situation, who can provide additional details about the situation and may have different situations that they've witnessed that they could provide, providing their name and number is helpful as well. The information that, if not everybody has this information, but we really need the adult's age, the date of birth and social security number you may or may not know, but if you have it, it helps out because we have people who have the same name. And so when we're trying to search our system to see if there's been another referral, it does help if we can narrow it down to make sure we have the accurate, correct information. And if you have information about relatives or a friend, somebody else that can provide information as well, others living in the home, and if there's any concern about those persons living in the home, because we want to be concerned about our worker safety, the client safety, about when we come to the home to do the interview, and if you know who the alleged perpetrator is, and any information about them is very helpful. As I said, the more thorough information that can be provided and examples given as to what is happening would make the decision process much more smooth and able to make that decision more clearly. So when we're making our decision, we have two criteria we're looking at. We're looking at the vulnerability of that client, and here's where we talk about them unable to protect him or herself, and the harm or threatened harm of abuse, neglect, or exploitation. Excuse me. We need both criteria to be present and identifiable. So that decision, then we would assign the case to be investigated. If only one of the criteria is met, then the referral would be denied. So that's why we're looking for as much information that you can provide. And the other thing that you need to know is that when the referral gets sent to the local office, both denied and assigned referrals are sent to the local office, and the assigned ones they will assign to a worker. They also review the denied referrals, because sometimes the local office has additional information about a situation because they may have worked with that client previously. So they can ask for that, that denial referral to be reconsidered, that they want it to be open so that they can do a more thorough investigation. So they are reviewed, and that information is then sent back to centralized intake to ask for reconsideration on it. Also, when the decision is made, if it's denied, a denial letter will go to be sent to the referral source. And as mandated reporters, if you provide your address, the letter will go to you. We do have individuals who are concerned persons who can call in that are not mandated. They can remain anonymous, and if they don't provide an address, then no letter is sent. But if you're a mandated reporter, you provide your address and the letter will be sent. If it's assigned, same thing, the letter will go out to you, and the letter will include the worker's information, so you can contact who the worker is who is assigned to the case. The denial letter, it will say the referral is denied, and there's optional reasons why we were denied. One, it will not be marked because of confidentiality reasons. It will be denied, and what the list there is for, it's going to be denied for one of those reasons. And during the investigation, the workers need to do a number of things. They need to figure out from the allegations what is occurring, and if there is truly abuse, neglect, and exploitations going on. So they're going to look, and this is part of our statute, look at the nature and extent of the cause. They're going to look at the capacity for the client's self-care. They're going to also look if it's who's managing their personal affairs and their financial affairs, and their willingness and capacity to use available resources and services. And what that means is we are going to work with that client, and if we talk about capacity, are they able to understand their decisions that they make, the consequences of them, and if they are able to make that informed decision, then they have the right to refuse services that we may be offered. We still have to conduct our investigation. They can't refuse the investigation, but they can refuse services that we may want to provide or that might be able to help them. If we have a referral that comes in and it says that the client is a risk to themselves or others, we consider that imminent danger. And we will respond probably, does it mean that they've already harmed themselves and an ambulance needs to be called, and calling 911, calling law enforcement, whatever the situation is, we would respond in an emergency manner. If the referral comes in and it's not indicating there's an imminent danger to the client or to others, then we have a time frames that we have to work within. And so our workers will make contact within 24 hours. And this contact can be in one of two ways. They can call the client or they can call a collateral contact. And that collateral person is someone other than the referral source. We want them to be contacting somebody who can provide additional information to understand what the circumstances are and what is occurring. Or in that 24-hour, they could visit them in person. They have that choice of doing it in person or by phone within that first 24-hour time frame. If they choose to do it by phone in that first 24 hours, then by 72 hours, our staff need to be out there to interview the client within 72 hours face-to-face. And we want them to interview the client alone and be able to get clear information from them. If there is any barriers of getting access to the client, then we can contact law enforcement and help them provide access to the client and providing the ability to interview them and see how their welfare and safety is. Then the investigation, most of them, it will depend on what's occurring in them. They can last anywhere from 30 to 90 days is kind of our average of a referral. But sometimes if there's more intensive things occurring, like we have court intervention, then to get on scheduled for a court docket and things is longer than 90 days, so that the case will remain open until that court intervention has been completed and we've verified services and the client is safe and stable. But the majority of our cases are between 30 and 90 days. Okay. And so when we're out there, we're going to need to look at all the allegations, and sometimes when we're doing our investigation, we uncover some things that weren't reported. There might be additional allegations that we find during our investigation. So after all the allegations have been identified for abuse, neglect, and exploitation, our workers will need to then determine, from our standard, is a reasonable belief. Did the abuse, neglect, or exploitation occur? And if they did, they would substantiate. If they don't believe that there was a reasonable belief, then they would not substantiate. We would look at the situation and see what services might be able to help the client if there's an unmet need. We would help coordinate those services, making referrals, making sure that there's a connection there for the client if they're willing and wanting to accept services from APS. We also have access to $1,000. It's a limited amount to help stabilize that situation. That might be there might be durable medical equipment that's needed, a building of a ramp. We've done things where people needed homes cleaned out. We've provided costs for dumpsters. We've done extermination things for bed bugs. We're very creative with $1,000 and what it can be used for, but that is something that they can that we can use for the client. And we're going to make sure that we're going to connect them to services, and that's where our community partners come in. We are not a direct provider of service under APS. We are an investigative process, and so then we're going to want to connect to who does provide this service. Is it a referral to Meals on Wheels? Is it transportation they need? Is it home health or home help, which is a MDHHS program that, as mentioned earlier, provides a provider pay for a provider to come in to provide help with activities of daily living or instrumental activities of daily living like housework or shopping. We would make referrals there. Coordination with other community resources. Maybe it's a referral to a waiver service, or it might be a referral for mental health services, or it could be any type of service that the community has that might meet the client's needs. We're also going to look at their natural support system. Who's there to help them? Do they have a neighbor that's willing to help out? Is there a church member, or are there other family or friends that can help out? And last, we would look at legal intervention would be our last goal there, because our purpose is to make sure that the client remains in their home and the least intrusive, least invasive intervention. So legal intervention would be our last resort that we would provide going on with a client in need. Okay. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of what we do for our investigation and some of what your reporting requirements are. We can open it up for questions, but I do just have a little plug. We have a conference at the end of August, the National Adult Protective Services Association. It's a national association. It's bringing their conference to Michigan, to the Amway Grand, and it's August 29th through the 31st. And our Attorney General Dana Nessel will be our keynote speaker. So if people are interested, there's still room for registration. And you can go to NAPSA, which is NAPSA-now and the conference information is located there. And the day after our conference, there's a half-a-day symposium summit on financial exploitation, and that's located at the same website, and you could check out that summit as well. So it's open to everyone, and it's our community partners that we like to work with, because it's not just for Adult Protective Services staff, it's also for all the community partners that we work with.
Cynthia, we've been answering the questions in the Q&A, but there is one that we haven't answered because we think it's really applicable to all, and all would like to hear the answer from you, and it's about reports. So the question is, can a FOIA, that stands for Freedom of Information Act request, surface regarding who has filed an anonymous report of elder abuse? And further, can it be discovered in a court proceeding? So first, FOIA.
Adult Protective Services reports are FOIA-able. We do not release the referral information. It's redacted. The reports are redacted based on the FOIA criteria of identifying information is all redacted. And so if the person was anonymous, we would not even say that. We would just not give out any information about the referral source. And if there's an open case, we may not give you information on the open case because it could impede the investigation. But once the case is closed, then you would be able to get the full report. And then the second part.
Well, so let's go back to that. So it is FOIA-able, but it will be redacted, so nobody will find out who made the report.
Correct.
But then the next question is, or what you seem to say is, once everything was done, is it the person who made the report that can request and get an unredacted version?
Unredacted would not go to someone. You would get a redacted version. If you're the person who made the report, or if you're just someone that might be involved with the case, anyone can request the FOIA. But we're going to redact identifying information, and that means we'll never give out the referral source information, because in our statute it says we have to keep it confidential, and it is would be dismissible. You could get fired for releasing it.
Okay.
And so, we would not give it out.
All right. So the other part of the question is, what about in a court proceeding?
Only in a court proceeding if the judge gives a court order to us, and specifically in that court order requests the name of the referral source. Like that, we have court orders for reports, but we don't give them the referral's name unless they specifically asked for the referral source name. And as I was saying, that's only occurred twice in my 24 years here at Central Office, that a court order has come in and specifically asked for the referral source name.
So very, very infrequently. Okay.
Yes, it's kept very highly confidential because we want people to report. And that's also why we have the good faith clause to protect people who in good faith made a report, that they're not going to have repercussions for making that report.
So the message is, I think, when in doubt, report.
Yep, and that's to the I think the number of the 855, the 444-3911 number, which is our centralized intake number, which is, as I is 24/7 staff, 365 days a year. So whenever you need to make that report, you can. The next thing I just have a little thing a little saying here. Our society must make it right and possible for old people not to fear the young or be deserted by them, for the test of a civilization is the way it cares for its helpless members. And Pearl S. Buck said that, and she was an advocate for children, but she also in later life became an advocate for older adults as well, from her work in children's, realizing that it also applied to older adults. And what I like to say is we're all in this together. We can't do it alone, and there's no excuse for elder abuse. So as you say, when in doubt, report.
Okay, Chris, another question has come in, if I may. If a victim is being exploited financially by a con artist or caregiver due to manipulation, And they say that's based on clear evidence from the financial records, for example, check fraud, bank records, etc. Does APS consider that sufficient evidence to confirm an inability to manage personal or financial affairs? And I think maybe this person means, does APS consider that sufficient evidence to say they're a vulnerable adult because the victim did not successfully resist or identify the financial exploitation? They're saying it would seem they are not able to protect themselves. How does APS view that?
Yes, there would, every situation is unique, but if someone is been taken advantage, and I think Scott will get into this much Teeter later in the symposium, but you have the undue influence people that are in situations where they're the caregiver and they can influence that person and take advantage of their finances. We would look at that as that the money is for the client. It's not for anybody else's use. So the money being used needs to be used and demonstrated that it's a need for that client. If the need is being shown that it's being used for other things, that is definitely the financial exploitation, and we would look at it that way. And we would involve, law enforcement. We'd make a referral there about crime being committed. If it has to do with the scams that come through the phone or the internet or wiring money, we would contact, the Attorney General's scam area, because that would include across state lines, and that's a federal offense. So there'd be other people we would have to involve in that situation.
So to sum it up, if I may, if there's financial exploitation, then you do consider that a vulnerable adult and you will investigate and make appropriate referrals.
Yes.
Okay. I'm looking to see if there are any others.
Looks like there might be.
And also on the screen while you're looking for that is my information. Also, Chris Lamlin, who's our Adult Protective Services Policy Specialist, is attending today. Those are our email address. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. And then the bottom number is the statewide line to report abuse and neglect and exploitation too.
Yeah, and there's another question. It's kind of a tough one, though. It's from a friend in the United Kingdom. Boy, I guess we've got a worldwide reach here.
That's awesome.
So they're talking about abuse that may be taking place in a care home. Now, they're not clear whether that care home is a nursing home or assisted living. But they say, how do we ensure predictive abuse ratios? Like 70, they're saying about 70% are caregivers care and maybe about 30% don't. So 2 questions here. What sort of jurisdiction does APS have in care facilities? Maybe you can talk about that for a second, and then we'll have the other question.
So if the abuse occurs in the community, or in an adult foster care or home for the aged, then APS has jurisdiction. If it occurs in a nursing home, the licensing, which is the licensing for regulatory affairs, that's their jurisdiction. However, there is a caveat. If the person was in a nursing home and say they go home on a visit with a family member and they come back with bruises that they didn't have when they left, then it would be reported to us because the abuse did not occur in the nursing home. So we would be involved in doing that. So there, but if it's by staff or another resident and it's occurring within the nursing home, that falls under the licensing and regulatory affairs division.
Great answer. The other part of that question is a tough one, and it's, how do we develop abuse-resistant cultures? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think being aware and being willing to make a referral. And I think our task force has helped a lot. And also the multidisciplinary teams that may be in different areas. They provide an opportunity for awareness of things going on in their county. And if we can get more of them and more people to work on those, they would be a way to have some awareness of what is going on. But just being aware, I think the symposium here helps bring awareness to what is occurring out there for abuse, neglect, and exploitation.
Great answer. I agree. We've got to trust our gut and report, and we've just got to all start with ourselves to get this abuse-resistant culture. Well, those are all the questions that I see, unless I'm missing one or two here, Scott. Otherwise, I think we're keeping right on time, and we'll turn it back over to Kristen.
And I just want to say thank you for your time and attention today, and I hope you found it informative. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Farrell, for helping us all understand when to make a referral to APS and what information that we need to include in that referral.